Greetings, Mark Grang here, publisher of The Sun, and Happy New Year. It's January 2nd and a very cold morning. Today my guests are the boys from Peabody, Smith, Badger, Peabody, and Smith, Brendan Battenfelder and Austin Hale. How you guys doing?
Doing great. Happy New Year, Mark.
Good. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Mark. Thanks for having us.
All right, we're going to talk about real estate. So there's a lot of things coming down the line, both on a state level and even locally with a lot of building, but why don't we start with a review of 2025? Brendan, you want to start? Basically, how was it? How was it from the consumer's point of view, and how was it from your point of view, the realtor's point of view?
Overall, I think it was a positive year. I think perspective of what the market looked like, maybe based on what type of consumer you were. Were you a seller? Were you a buyer? Right? Mm-hmm. Little different markets for each of those. We've had year-over-year increases in prices, although that is softening. Right, so we've seen sellers in a better position where we're not really losing ground in the grand scheme of things. We can get into the details a little more if you want, but on the buy side, affordability continues to be the issue. Right, it has softened as the years moved on, so interest rates coming down has been really positive, increasing some affordability there. But prices have not softened for a buyer. Right, so they're still paying over 6% interest, most of them. And they are still paying, really high or higher prices than you would have a couple of years ago. So the affordability index has been pretty tight on the buy side.
So 2 or 3 years ago, people were lining out the door.
Correct.
Now that's over, and I've seen a few prices where there's actually a price decrease in some of the more expensive properties. But not that we're in a bubble, but I always think when we're at the very top, are they really decreases, or people were just asking too much to begin with, and it's just being a little more realistic now?
I'd say it's a combination of both. So there certainly is some aspirational pricing. This is what we see it as, right? Aspirational pricing. It's just, the numbers come in that I'm here, but I want to try this, which has its pros and cons. So we are seeing an increase in price reductions, right? The other side of it is that sometimes everyone's looking at the home. Certainly sellers have a lot of pride in their home. So everyone's looking at the positives. All of a sudden we expose it to the buyers, and the buyers start to point out things that are, maybe are not pulling the high value of the house that everybody agreed would be there. And so some of those price reductions are truly needed because of some condition of the home or situation, and others are that pricing where we've needed to correct.
So in this market, and we'll get to the commercial in 1 second, Austin, but in this market, it really is a second home market. We have the real shortage is on affordable homes. How do you,
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So, and new homes are being built, but they're expensive homes.
They are expensive homes, and I think we have seen that time and time again that a lot of the builders are in it for a profit.
Right.
It's a for-profit industry, right? And the profit margin on a $900 or a $1.4 million home is a little better than it is at $300,000. So production building or affordable building tends to be en masse and tends to have some kind of economic incentive built into it, whether it be lower price land, and not quality-wise, but maybe there was an incentive, or maybe there was a trade-off that some of that land got built on at a better price.
Now, are these expensive homes? One thing I was reading about in the Seaport area of Boston is that they built some really very expensive high-rise condos.
Yep.
And there was one building, this beautiful building, like it tilts into the bay, and they had like 120 units, and the condos were 2 or 3 million, and they can't sell 47 of them. I think, how the hell can they not? When you only 120 units or whatever it is, how can there not be that many wealthy people in Boston? And how does that work? Or all of a sudden, those wealthy people aren't buying those expensive condos. And I kind of relate it to here is that we have some expensive, the Kearsarge ones up at Cranmore have done really well.
Yep.
We got the ones down by the brook down like Ski Mobile Road. Yep. But they're $1.5 million. Is there a point? Is that too much? To me, it's wow. It's a lot of money for a fancy condo. The market's the market, right?
The market is the market, and we started that project a long time ago, right? And a lot of those projects have so much lead time on them, right? Yeah. So you're building designs, you're building floor plans, you're building price points. or the price point's coming from what you designed, right? And that's all months and months, if not years, ahead of the actual putting the foundation on the ground. So that is how you could end up with oversupply. But the development projects that are happening down by Cranmore has just been a kind of a rising tide, is bringing up some of those other ships, right? The demand has been there. Those started in the 600, 700, 800 range, and now they're going to push 1.6 at this point. And that demand to be a part of that experience over there has been there. It's not to say that it hasn't been soft. It's not to say that the developers haven't had to adjust or negotiate, but people continue to come forward to the Mount Washington Valley, right? I mean, I think it's the grander concept that even some of the developers originally noticed, is that this valley was worth investing in, more so than as equal to the places where they're building.
Yeah, and obviously just being in the foot of Mount Cranmore, there's not very many places in this world you can be at the foot of a ski area.
You
like
can
that.
walk right there, right? But I think the combination of that is you can also walk into town.
Village, right?
So the village concept, which was right next to the mountain, was really a win-win for development over there.
And the reinvestments Cranmore's been making in their own infrastructure, right? The lodges, and some of their other offerings. I think those are...
Yeah, that helps. And so what's the on the commercial side, I think regular people think of commercial as just like retail development, and then of course recently it's been the hotels.
Yep.
So where are we with the retail? Like I see down at the old TJ Maxx property there, like the Sierra's there now, and I guess another one's coming in.
That's the story.
That's the story.
That's the story. It was rumored Harbor Freight coming in. That rumor's kind of recirculated now that they've maybe reinvested after maybe coming away from the table, but to be determined.
So as a commercial, you're the commercial guy. So what does that mean?
Sure.
What does that mean? You sell the commercial properties, obviously, but
commercial properties beyond the retail and the hotels, right? We do have some industrial properties in Conway. Despite what most people think, they may be hidden in some corners that many of our people might not go down regularly. But properties that are used for making profit, right? And Conway has those centers. What's been strong in 2025 are our village centers. I would say North Conway Village has been quite strong, despite what we might be seeing across greater Conway. I think of the Five and Dime building, the Hooligans building, that both recently changed hands.
the Five and Dime was sold?
It's under contract, but went very, very quickly. But as I look at kind of the picture that's been painted in 2025 of the greater commercial market in Conway, things were pretty stagnant. We've seen a lot, just to point out here, we've had 384 days on market as the average for commercial properties in 2025 that's sold. So it's taking a lot longer, and that's always been the general consensus on commercial versus residential. It takes more time. There's a lot more moving pieces. You have a lot more money involved typically. So it's been quite slow, but we see these commercial centers, Conway Village for an example, changing over quite rapidly. We look at the Barry project and what they've done, totally reinvesting in the area. So I think we'll still see Conway Village starting to come into town. They're doing a lot more with the Majestic. They've done a great job down there. So I still think that the two village centers are up and coming and definitely moving quickly. But as you move away from those zones, it's a different picture. We think of labor shortages and how people are able to work some of these retail jobs, some of these hotel jobs. It becomes a lot more of a challenge.
The Strip was always it's not. It's sort of like a barbell thing, like the Strip developed and all the retail, blah blah blah. And now it's nice to see. Obviously, that we all want the villages to be vibrant.
Sure.
And certainly North Conway's got a new generation of young folks, owners, and all that with the, Cheese Louise guys and all that, and Conway Village too. Absolutely. So is the retail, do you have a sense of where the retail world is?
Retail world, we talked a little bit about this before we came. It seems that the smaller mom and pop type businesses have been a little bit slower, more reluctant to maybe make moves or take on additional spaces. But we're definitely still seeing the influx of these larger entities. Ocean State Job Lot comes to mind, the Sierra, which you mentioned. The larger retailers seem to be kind of circling in, and maybe it's in the middle of the barbell, as you suggested, not so much on this end. But the retail seems to be going strong despite what, maybe the economics say on a greater scale.
Right, and you see, retail's, a lot of industries are challenged these days with change of technology and cultural patterns, and certainly settlers is challenging there too, just to attract retailers. And they've announced they've got some big retailers coming with Lululemon and the Ulta beauty thing that I'm sure, Brendan, you would anxious to go.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I'm sure you are.
My daughters and I will be at the door.
But the thing that's really attracted the attention the last couple of years has been the hotels.
Right.
And so before we get into the hotels, what about B&Bs? Is that, the old days, like 28, 30 years ago, people come up, hey, I want to run a B&B, and then they find out 10 years later they don't want to work 26 hours a day, and then they kind of move on. Is that, because it's tough out there with, obviously with Airbnb and all the short-term rentals, it's sort of
well, and
affected.
we've had a couple change hands this year.
Right.
Spruce Moose is one that I think of,
Yep.
and some of the smaller entity, they're more motel style, but the White Trellis is another one that comes to mind. Some of those properties seem to be changing hands, but from what I can see, they're still holding on for their particular market and the clientele that they attract. The Airbnb thing, I know Brendan can go on about these, but
do you have buyers? I mean, there are people who come up from Boston and knock on the door and say, hey, I'm 52 years old, I'm a banker, I want to buy a B&B. I mean, is that phenomenon still there as much?
I would say not as much. It's still happening. I think you're seeing a lot of more investor types that are thinking about creative ways that they can use this. Can they come into this B&B and convert a couple of them into residential units? Speaking to our affordable housing, can we run a hybrid model where we still have these B&B services, but other rooms are rented out? I know that's plans for some of these properties we've talked about.
So a lot of them have existed, right? And the concept is still there. You can stay for the weekend, but the management style has changed a little bit. We've seen a couple where it was that on-site purveyor who was cooking breakfast in the morning.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, look at the 1785 house, right? I mean, that was a full-on inn you could pull up if
Charlie.
it had vacancies, right?
Yeah.
Well known for their restaurant, and now it's a book large parties type of thing. And there may or may not be someone on site at the time. And we've seen more of the Wildflower and a couple of these that have been taken over, and their management is less people intensive, for better or for worse. So most of these have stayed lodging units, right? But we've seen other places like the Cranmore Inn change hands, and they're trying to grow the business, and they're on site.
As a conventional B&B?
As more of a on-site conventional setup with a little bit more interacting with the owner. But a lot of these, you're checking in online and you're getting codes to doors, and there's less owner presence on site. So that model of the Airbnb where you'd be greeted by the owner and they'd make you breakfast,
right,
that is fading a little bit from the Valley, I think. In some of the purchases we've seen, that management model has transitioned to kind of an online check-in, reach us if you need us type of thing.
I still think that there's a small niche of the B&B style. It's more of a boutique style now is what I would say is, it's probably a smaller market than we're seeing for the families that come up for the Airbnbs or the larger properties like the Wildflower. But I think of, Snow Village Inn, types like that, where people are seeking the experience. They want to come to the site. Stonehurst, of course, absolutely.
Christmas Farm Inn
Christmas
up in Jackson.
Farm, Inn at Thornhill. I mean, there's a bunch of them.
And they're doing well.
And they're high end. I mean, partly they most of those go to a high end property.
I mean, I think the example that a lot of people know from years ago is the Adventure Suites of rebranding yourself from a strip motel to a new experience.
Right.
And success followed that, differentiating yourself. So we're seeing some business models change, but I think as far as bedrooms go, as places to stay, a lot of those smaller Airbnb units are still being used as as vacation stays.
And the hotels, Austin, I mean, that was really had captured all the headlines, no pun intended, over the last few years. And I editorialized a few times as saying, just don't. There's a moratorium, and we just talked before in the air that it's ending this year, April.
Well, actually, this past April, 2025.
Oh, it ended this past year.
It did. Yes.
So that was 2 years moratorium.
Correct.
And I know people at town hall said, well, if we hadn't had that, we would have had 2 more hotels. I don't know where they were, what that was. Is that true? I mean, I'm not saying that those guys aren't saying it, but
that remains to be seen. I mean, now we're kind of in this position where we've been blocked off for 2 years.
Right.
Now do we have a backlog? We haven't quite seen that here at the end of the year, not from, meetings that I've gone to or news that you've written. Projects don't. I think that they now have slowed up, and maybe some of those hotels are looking at what's happening. Do we have a saturation issue now? Are we starting to get to that point? I think of the new hotel right there next to the Red Barn Plaza. That's quite a large property. Might have been a little controversial at the time.
right, they got so close to the road.
So close to the road, close to their neighbors. The view shed that I know the town has been very
Right.
adamant about as well. So I think that some of these larger retail hotels are seeing the writing on the wall.
Right. So I mean, to me, the market. That's what my point has always been: is that let the market decide.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, because by the time you pass legislation like this, the bubble's over.
Right.
And they get the new one up here on Interville Crossroad.
Just opened
Yeah.
in December, yeah.
Yeah, and I always say I'm probably the only one in town who liked that property. I think it used to be a grand hotel, back in the 1880s and
Yeah.
Sure.
and all that, and nice place to have a drink up the stairs. Have you been up there?
I haven't been up there yet, so
I haven't been up there. It does
remains to
look
be
like
seen. But they're open and the lights are on.
Yeah,
And,
looks.
you
It's white. It looks. Yeah,
it's
good.
got that classy look to
Yeah,
it.
yeah, okay.
Right? So it, it definitely, there was controversy when it came in, and development creates that a lot of times.
Yeah.
Change is tricky, but, but it is supplying jobs, likely more jobs than was there on that footprint before.
Yeah.
And,
And
so
it's probably driving some zoning changes that we will see coming forward here in the next couple of years with the master plan and things that the town is working on. So maybe it was needed in a sense.
Speaking of STRs, you mentioned STRs, so
Sure.
we might as well go there. And George Epstein, who's our columnist, and he comes on once a month, and
Sure.
he just says, get rid of STRs, solves a housing issue. And I'm no fan of STRs.
Right.
I mean, full-blown commercial STRs in residential neighborhoods, I'll say that. I think everybody should have a right to rent their property for whatever, a couple of months a year, but not when it's an out-of-towner and you've turned a residential property into a commercial property. That's my personal feeling about it. But I also believe that most of these second homes aren't Airbnbs anyway. So ending the STRs, if you could, magic wand, wouldn't really solve the issue.
We don't think so. I think that is what was bearing out in the beginning, is that a lot of these units, there are plenty that were purchased and are sole investments, right? So if all of a sudden we did a straight ban on STRs and you couldn't rent your home, which is drastic, but had we gone there, you would see some investors pull back because they had no personal use of the property, right? But I don't think that would be a significant number. A lot of the people that we interviewed early on had said, we use the home at this season, where we love hiking in the summer, or we're big skiers, or we're snowbirds, right? Yeah. So they had a lot of personal use for the home, and we're still seeing that with a lot of our buyer clientele. The true successful investor, that takes a lot of work. And a lot of success. Whereas the supplementing your income has been around since the snow train, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that concept of sharing your home has been a part of this valley for its entire history. And
it is work. I have a neighbor of mine, a second homeowner, and he stopped now basically, but for a few years there he was renting his property, and then it was a lot of work. Yeah. I mean, every spring he'd have the repair guys come in and fix the screen doors and the broken windows and all that kind of stuff. And he says, it's a lot. And it is. And the people with the most expensive properties really don't care about the extra income.
Well, it depends. I mean, we have investors that have bought these for income producing, right? So they exist. But there are other situations where people certainly own, higher valued homes. They use them seasonally or occasionally, and they're in an economic situation to be able to do so, and they may offset their costs by rentals. Yeah. So, if we banned it, is it going to be an influx? Is it going to change the whole makeup of our neighborhoods? I don't see a big sweeping change. A lot of our owners can afford those homes. They were qualified by the banks to own them without rental income in the first place, right? So, it boils down to this being a great place to vacation and bring your family, and a lot of these owners own those homes for that.
And the reality is with the STRs, there have been many lawsuits around them. And there was a recent one that we reported on in Madison where they tried to limit, they did two things. They stopped the STRs going forward, and then they tried to limit the ones to X number of days, a year, whatever that was. And the judge says, no, you can't do that.
Right.
And so even if town of Conway wanted to do something, it wouldn't, all the ones that are existing would likely be grandfathered. And then, to me, I have an issue with that because all of a sudden you get a two-tiered value, right?
Correct.
If you go ahead and all of a sudden, you can't rent your place out at all, then all of a sudden those older ones, the grandfather ones, it's like having a giant sign on Route 16. That value never goes away.
I can. And
Right, and having two properties side by side, one's a short-term rental that's grandfathered in, that's now worth X amount more just because you have that right to do it down the road. That creates challenges in the market itself.
Yeah. So going forward, Austin, what do you think? What's it look like commercial-wise? You see anything in the near horizon that's going on outside of the few of the retail spots being filled in?
Well, I mean, not so much commercial, but we think of commercial as multi-unit. So the big projects, right, that are coming along. Barsamian's project behind TJ Maxx, obviously going to add a lot of units. Hundreds of units, 240 something units. They've got an additional 156 units that will be built out. The River Turn technology lane there. They have 40 so far. You can see right now that they're extending their road.
Because they have one building there, and I think they're going to put in two more, right?
Correct.
Eventually.
Yep. So 40 total units as it stands today.
I should know this, but is that subsidized?
That is subsidized. It is mixed income, so there are some that are not income based. There are market rate apartments in there, but there are also some affordable housing units as well, and that's their intention. There is they will all be mixed income buildings.
And then we have the ones on the Red Jacket.
Yep, the Red Jacket. I'm not sure exactly where they're at in their permitting process. That's gone back several times to the planning board for multiple things. Again, we talk about that, the view shed type of thing, and what are they doing with the hotel structure too. I'm not sure that their ownership group is quite ready to put forth a plan there. I know the planning board sent them back quite a few times so far, so TBD on that one.
And then what other big ones are around? I mean, there's one that, it's kind of big up by Ledgewood Road there by Chalmers.
Yep, Ledgewood Road, that one, again, they're having some back and forth with the town, and I think that's the greater theme here is that is all coming back to our zoning and how that's being updated in the master plan as we work through that, I believe, this year. So I know that a lot of these projects have had several dates with both the planning board and the selectmen.
It is an interesting, it's always NIMBYism, right? Everybody says, we need more housing, we need more affordable housing. Right. Yep. And then they propose these, and I know the one in Ledgewood, Steve Porter, who's a selectman and representative of the planning board, is too big.
Yeah.
Right.
Too big. Without even saying, well, this, it's just too big because it offends his sensibilities, and it's more than that. But it is interesting is that we kind of speak out of both sides of our mouths in this community.
It seems we've seen that a lot out of the selectmen and the planning board, a couple members. It's not necessarily a zoning variance that they're coming for. It's just simply it's too big, or we think about the hotel at Intervale Outlook. It just doesn't belong there. That was the quote then. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how this year plays out with some of the master plan and zoning changes that we see with the town of Conway.
Do you think it's being stricter? The more I know, that they're redoing the whole ordinance, all the ordinances. They've hired a consultant and all that, so it's still.
I think we will see the commercial zoning get tighter. Yes.
And what does that mean?
I think it'll be more challenging on the Strip, and especially in an area, you know, as we get north of the Village here, they're trying to protect that area, as we're seeing with that project in particular. I think they're trying to make it harder for large developments like that. Residential, I think we could say the opposite. I think they're going to try to strip back some of the zoning to make it more flexible and maybe more affordable for a developer to come in to then maybe provide more affordable housing.
Because part of that is that, I mean, if you're a developer, like even putting granite curbing in and things like that, it just gets really, I mean, expensive quickly.
It does. The cost of building has increased, you know, and it's the infrastructure before you even put a foundation in the ground. And the town has justification for some of it, but that justification runs up against the dollar. And you wonder how you end up with $900,000 units, but it's expensive to build a road.
Yeah.
Look at the example of what they're doing at Pine Hill, that development there. You know, I think
oh, that's right. We forgot about that.
I think there was a little bit of sticker shock there when that was first presented on some of those housing units that are, you know, being built as we speak. Higher price tags, and I think there's a little bit of it was a little bit of a put off to some of the community members on how expensive it was. But we think about these road costs, granite curbings, and the investment that they've already made there on the land. I can only imagine the costs.
Right. And that's a huge, this is the Ridgeline one at the corner by, across from Walmart, you're saying, with the Norway Bank is now. And, you know, and that's a multi-year with, you know, assisted living and medical center and all that. So it really is going to be a village unto itself at some point, which is...
Correct.
You know.
And the nice thing is that, you know, that developer, it's not his first rodeo. They've done it before, right?
Yeah,
so they understand the big picture. And again, that planning started years ago, right? And it still has some changes as we see might be coming down the pipe of layouts and what have you. But they've got stuff up there now that, you know, they're building, and they've got properties under agreement, and we're seeing some success.
They're fully leased out, and their efficiency rental units there.
And those are the smaller units.
Yeah, 400 square foot units.
And they're building, because I went back there, I went to the Norway Bank, and so I took a ride back there, and so they're building, right now, there's like 7 or 8 homes, under 6 or 7 under construction.
Yep.
So, I mean, Brenda, do you see, I mean, it always takes longer than everybody thinks, right, to have these things built out, but literally we could have 300 or 400 or 500 new units.
We could.
One way or the other in the next couple of years.
We could.
I mean, you think that has a material effect on the market, both on the market? I mean, one would think even if they're expensive, that means there are some people going there. That means it should be free up some other ones.
Units are units
blah, blah, blah.
are units. Yeah. Correct. I mean, that's the concept, is that even if you build 15 $900,000 homes, the demand is there. People take them. That leaves the other homes out there. Maybe they would have, you know, a $700,000 home. So units are units in the sense, but building 200, 100, 40 here, 40 there, will have an effect, I think, on some of the affordability. It might put some pressure on some of the other moderately priced homes, because there'll be more inventory to choose from. So if you're qualified to look at a $250,000, a $300,000, a $400,000 home, you might have more options, and it might put some more pressure on that pricing. But it takes years to put these into production, right? We have seen from the commercial community that they know housing is one of the barriers to getting a business up and running here, right? So we've seen it. We've seen it with local restaurant owners. We've seen it with restaurants that have built homes and have acquired or retained housing for their staff, which in the past, if you just wanted to run a restaurant, you just ran a restaurant, right? Nowadays, you got to own an apartment building on top of that.
You know, people have said, you know, they just closed John Fuller, and people are saying, well, maybe we shouldn't have, because we have all this housing coming and we're going to need a new school. And we know that the school population is still continuing to go down, and those trends take years and years, generations to change, unless we had a gold rush or something here. And, you know, but it does, everything kind of goes together. You know, we don't have enough housing. It kind of prevents small businesses, you know, you're saying the restaurants in particular, the service industries, and we don't have enough kids. Like we just don't have a lot of families. So do you see any, you know, I know Jackson Hole, which is kind of a similar ski community to ours, except for probably a little more isolated, and they've lost their permanent population has gone down just because of the real estate. But here we have the outlying communities too, so it's a little more affordable in Madison, a little more affordable in Bartlett, and so on and so forth. I mean, you see, I guess what I'm asking is, you see You see how we can get more kids here, Brendan?
Well, that's a deeper subject. It's certainly affordable housing and opportunities for family. It's just the cost of living is through the roof these days, right? And the income you need to qualify for just a starter home is astronomical right now, right? So I think some of these units, some of these rental units is going to offer some value there and give people some more opportunity. It lags, right? I mean, we've needed it for 10 years, 20 years. We've needed it for 3 decades now, right? But it is, and we built all those condos in the 80s when there was a big boom, and that tended to be a little bit more towards the vacation market, right? And we're building and booming in the vacation market as well. But that vacation demand is going to take some of the pressure off the primary home demand. So yes, it's going to be able to give opportunities for families to move in and create some affordability here. We are a resort town in many ways, and at least North Conway is, and the surrounding towns. There just also needs to be jobs and opportunity.
Yeah, and one goes hand in hand. They tend to go hand in hand.
Correct.
Right?
You can move here, bring your kids, put them in the school district, but you also got to go to work to afford.
And we know this is that the average age of the first homeowner, in my generation was like in their 20s, and now it's like approaching.
It's 40.
Yes.
Yeah, the first-time home buyer average it depends on how you look at it, 38 to 40, based on some national statistics.
So when someone walks through the door like this, 30 years old, and they want a primary home or vacation home, you first, like, what do you tell them? You say, well, how much money do you have to begin with, right?
Well, we've always started with that question, but it's it's always been affordability, and between us and the banks, we certainly can get to that point. We see those buyers out there. We've even seen Boston buyers who rent in Boston, but they're buying their first home up here, which is truly their second home, right? Because the affordability of being a part of home ownership can exist up here if you've got Boston income, right? So we've seen some of that.
And remote workers.
Remote workers, right? We've seen a little bit of pullback on that in the last. Yeah. Between
fewer
industry. I mean, the trend exists, and I think will continue. Some of the families that have moved into town with younger kids, a lot of them, if not one, if both of them, are still remote work. Yeah. But we're seeing industries pull back on that.
Back to office. So you're seeing a lot of that by the administration and different companies, larger companies. They want people back in the offices, and so it's definitely putting a stretch on your ski home here and living here full time.
But that ship has sailed. I mean, there are so many blended remote workers and so forth. It's hard to go back 5 days.
I don't think we're going backwards, but we are probably seeing some pandemic correction. Some companies that went that way, opened the doors, and then have had to pull back.
Right.
But a lot of other industries are continuing to just start or function in that way. And we're seeing them. We're seeing those families here with young kids in the school districts. And their income base, their check is coming from from an entity nowhere near here.
Right. Yeah. So on the state level, there's a lot going on, and I was just reading where an ADUs is one of them. If you guys could address the change in the accessory dwelling units. But in New York City, they just passed a law. They call it the YES program or something like that, where you can put an ADU, a detached ADU, and it's the same old thing. They're not doing it right in the city, obviously, but in the outer boroughs, where it's more single-family homes, like the people are converting their garages to a home, and the neighbors are complaining about it because, it just adds more density in their neighborhood that they don't want. So Austin or Brendan, whoever wants to take this one, go through some of the state changes. I know ADUs, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but one of the issues is that whether we should have any state control, like the state is passing laws that are affecting us or local communities, and of course there's a whole issue about local control.
Well, that goes both ways, right? There's some issues maybe we need a little state guidance on. But to answer your question relative to the ADUs, the big change that came down this year is detached ADUs are now going to be allowed by right in all towns. So, for example, the town of Conway cannot restrict you having a detached ADU. Like we spoke about prior, having an attached ADU is already a right. The big key here for most people listening would be that you still have to meet their regulations, Conway's regulations. So being under the square foot maximum and meeting your septic capacities, those types of things are still things that you have to account for, but you are now allowed to have.
Have you
that.
seen any of that? Have you seen any of that people building? I know.
It looks like you've got one going up across the street
does
as we were
look like
walking
that.
when we were walking
No,
down.
I think that's absolutely true. I
No,
don't know that.
certainly we are seeing it pop up more, having conversations with people that are wondering how it's going to affect the value of their home. How do I incorporate either a detached now, or we certainly saw more in-home or attached ADUs. There are still some associations that don't allow it. It's still, some neighborhoods can go as far as restricting it. But yeah, no, we're seeing it being utilized for sure.
It seems like a good idea. I mean, I know of a friend of mine, he's building, he's retired, and he's building a little thing in his backyard for his daughter.
Yeah.
Adult daughter.
Yep.
It's separate.
And that's becoming, as we're talking about the aging populations of first-time home buyers, that's the key. You're seeing kids stay at home much longer, into their 30s oftentimes. So that, I think, will be the key driver in some of these ADUs are, children that are still at home, whether they're in the workforce or not.
Yeah, and in one sense, that kind of thing, other countries have multi-generational homes and so forth, and we did that back in 3 or 4 generations ago, 2 or 3 generations. I was brought up in Berlin in a classic triple decker.
Yep.
You
The
live
multifamilies,
there, you get the cousin there, you
Yep.
rent one at the bottom, and it's so there's something culturally that's a positive to that. To keep,
And we will say that even years ago that they existed quite a bit in the valley, but there was no mechanism to approve them, because if you did this 10 years ago, you were considered a 2-family, which was illegal via the town, right? So there are some of these that have come out of the shadows that have existed for 10, 20 years, and now have a way to retroactively go back and apply to the town and get approval for this second unit. And whether they rented it full time or used it for in-laws and for family members or what have you. So they've existed, and the new state law that allows them to be detached is just opening opportunity for people to convert garages or do above the garage, or if you've got enough acreage, put a separate unit on your property.
Yeah, and then the another one that's coming in, I think, Austin, this is true about in July, where it's going to encourage mixed use between residential and commercial, and does that affect us at all?
It will. I don't think that the town of Conway has much in the ways of restricting that right now, so maybe we won't feel it locally so much, but now it will be a right in a commercial zone to be able to have mixed use residential with your retail or other commercial operations. But I think we're seeing from the town of Conway that they're already encouraging those types of things, so I don't think it's going to affect us much.
Right, and the idea, of course, is just to have like a retail in the bottom, and then I think the Ridgeline people are doing that too. I think there are some of those units that's going next to the Dunkin' Donuts.
Exactly, yep. So up front there in their commercial zone, as I would call it. I think this is further down the road, but they do plan on having quite a commercial complex there, and the second floor is, from what I've been told, reserved for residential apartments. Yes.
Because in our community, I mean, obviously, if someone wants to build an apartment complex and commercial, like the ones in back of by the oil change place there, Whitesides.
Yep.
I mean, that's in a commercial zone.
Correct.
It is.
Yeah.
And we've had that mixed use. I mean, the apartments that were pulled down that the state had owned behind Market Basket, and just off the side of Settlers Green, there's apartments. So I don't think Conway has been too restrictive on residential building within the commercial footprint. So this is opening it up statewide to make sure towns don't have those restrictions in place.
I think this more been targeted at some of our larger cities, Manchester, Dover, Nashua, those types of towns, a little bit more industrial there. I don't think this had Conway in mind.
All right, one of the sexy ones we were talking about before we went on the air and we did a story on it is it's David Page and some other Dems have proposed having basically a luxury tax on properties valued more than $1 million, and I think it's for every $500 over $1 million you would pay $2.50 in it for taxes.
Yep.
And apparently And there are only 6,000 properties estimated in New Hampshire that are over $1 million.
That seems low, but
That's what the law.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what
That's
they're
what the law-
looking at,
they-
because they're doing
okay.
the math, and it would raise $30 million.
Right.
Boy, I mean, it's pretty attractive. Hey, let's go with the rich people who are second homeowners. Oh, and that's the other thing, is that it's not just local people who are wealthy. You have to. It's defined by if you stay there 180 days, and it has to be your primary home.
It has to be your homestead or your primary
Yeah.
residence. Declared as your primary residence.
I mean, does that make any sense?
Everybody's trying all kinds of concepts, right? And tax those that have more has always been something that was worth throwing out there. This bill is in committee and is one of close to 200 bills that are trying to rear their head in the State House this year. So there's a long way to go on this one, but it one of the concerns that we had talked about with Damon is we have multi-units that are not primary homes, right? Because they're investment properties.
Right.
They're worth over $1 million. They're the solution to affordable housing, yet they're going to get taxed because they're over $1 million.
Sure.
Right.
Think about the White Sides building, for example. That property
Those buildings
is worth
are all-
$1 million, I'm sure, but he's trying to be a part of the
Yeah.
solution, correct?
Yeah.
I think we can
So
agree on that.
I think there's, this will get tweaked if it even gets legs. But yeah, no, it will put a further tax burden on. And there are a lot of properties that, yes, certainly are. We can look at the classic mansions on the waterfront and say, right, they can handle an extra couple $1,000s a year. And that's probably true, right? But they're getting taxed for the assets they have. The flip side of it is $1 million, there's a lot of properties, or larger farmhouses, or even our agricultural places. Now, granted, if it's your homestead, you would be exempt, but maybe it's not. Maybe you're using a large parcel to farm on or what have you, and you've got a tenant in there. Next thing you know, you're going to get taxed on top of that. So there's some smaller portions of this where that tax is going to go after, or going to affect some people that aren't the concern.
Speaking of taxes, I mean, I think New Hampshire's like the highest property tax state, actually. For property
Top
taxes.
5, yep.
Yeah, and so when people, and places like Bartlett and Jackson, it's lower taxes for sure. So, how much do taxes make a difference when prospective buyers come into your shop?
It depends on the buyer, I would say. When we're talking about our local buyers here, it makes a huge difference. But it's seemingly, it's an inverse relationship, right? People are seeking those areas like Bartlett. I think of Freedom as an example as well. They have a lower tax basis. But the lake there, the mountains there, you're getting a lot more second homeowners that want to be in those areas, driving up the cost of the house. Yeah. So it's really an inverse relationship almost as you talk about that, because you're paying more for the house, yet paying maybe a lower tax burden. But again, just going back to the affordability piece, maybe for some of our local people.
Yeah, and the planning board, I know the town has hired a consultant basically redoing the ordinances, all of them. And and the planning board hasn't been doing a whole lot with the new ordinances right now, and I'm sure they're doing things. But if there's any, do they consult you? Do you ever talk to the planning boards, those guys, Ben and Eliza, and say, hey, what about this? I mean, what would you, if you were going to wave magic wands, what would you want the planning board to do? Besides get out of the way.
No, I mean, that is can I call it a thankless job? I mean, that is just tough. I mean, people are proposing ideas. It's the not in my backyard. It's we have set rules which we think govern 80-90% of what we think should happen in certain areas, right? And then someone uses those rules to build something that shocks people. And so the planning board is working with what they have. Sometimes they bring emotion or opinion to the table, but they're working within the confines that we have. Right. And then when we went through that master plan, and if you went to the public sessions, right, it was great to see people offering their opinion, right? And some of it we could legislate, people saying we want ma and pa restaurants instead of chain restaurants. I don't know that we can legislate that, right? But there was a lot of pride in the community and hopeful changes, which I think the master plan tried to distill. And now they're looking at, are there areas we need to protect, to to hold back large growth building or egregious, what some may say is egregious, right?
And it's tough, the one again by Chalmers up there, I mean, you're a developer, you get a piece of land, you spec it out. I mean, obviously the value of the land is based on how many units you can put there.
Sure.
They follow the law and they get to the planning board and they get Steve Porter saying, and believe me, if I lived up there, I'd probably be, didn't want that density there too. So I'm not criticizing anybody in particular, but holy smokes, like it is a little bit of a no-win at some point.
It seems to be the world we've lived in the past couple of years. And, the reason for moratoriums and stuff like that, kicking the can down the road, as we might say.
Yeah, I think the moratorium was really a reaction to this is all happening fast based on the rules we have in place. We are hoping to create new rules around the region sentiment, and so let's put the brakes. And that was a mechanism that they had at their fingertips.
Yeah.
So I don't have the magic wand. We need housing. There is stuff in the pipeline. We want reasonable zoning and planning to make sure that people can, they bought their house and now something different is going to show up in their backyard. That's growth, but the zoning laws should keep some sensibility around that.
Yeah, and it's nice that we have the in-between negotiations. I mean, I was picking on Steve Porter by saying it's just too big, but that's a sensibility that reflects a lot of the community too. We can have a development there, but just not make it oversized.
And we've seen them use some of that ability to push projects into a softer concept, right? We've seen it on the Strip, we've seen it out in Intervale. Although something showed up maybe that some people were against from day one, it is a different concept than was originally proposed. And
which one was that?
The Intervale, the hotel, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that was supposed to be larger, and they pushed the setbacks back, and although the hotel fit within the zoning rules as they were laid out that day, right? So legally, they had a right to build it.
And people wanted to save that tree.
People wanted to save the tree, which it was sadly taken down, but reconfigured and is now incorporated in the interior of the hotel.
And it's funny, I happened to be driving by when they were taking that tree down.
Yeah.
So I stopped in because I saw, it literally was like 5 minutes before, and it was an excavator. They didn't chop it. The excavator went over and went dink,
and pushed
it pushed over because it was so rotten. So it probably could have stayed another 10, 20, 30 years, but it was on its last legs.
Yeah. It was, and we definitely, everybody loves progress, nobody likes change.
Yeah, that's a good slogan.
I don't know who said that, but it's true. We need housing. We want to see change. We want to see buildings that are in rough shape taken over and revitalized, right? And there's a lot of outside of the valley money that comes in and remodels our housing stock. Now, a lot of these second homes are new kitchens, new flooring, new roof, new siding, right? They get updated. And it's just it's a reinvestment in our housing stock as a whole.
Yeah, it is. From a commercial point of view or just a growth point of view, the valley seems to be poised. And I always, people say, well, we can't grow anymore. We don't have enough land or something like that. I said, are you kidding me? You can squeeze things in everywhere. And I always, I've said, 20 or 30 years, this place will be twice the size, maybe 40 years. But do you see that? It just seems like because we're such a vibrant local community, plus we know this, being so close to the big markets, and we have space with the outlying towns.
Right. I know, certainly years and years and years ago, you would say, don't we feel like we've maxed out? And the next thing you know, we've got more roundabouts and we've got more big box stores and we've got, right? How many grocery stores do we have now? Right? Big box pet stores and craft stores, and that capacity is there, and there is still more land. Thankfully, some of it is being allocated for housing.
Yeah. And it's always perspective. A few years ago, I was running into some guy when all the hotels were coming up, and they said, I moved here in 2009, and this place is going to hell since then. And I said, well, he moved here, but there was already a Home Depot and a Lowe's.
Right.
So 10 years before that, people would have said that about the Lowe's and Home Depot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that's a sentiment repeated often.
So one last, we only got a couple minutes to go, and it's getting colder. We're here in the press room of the Conway Daily Sun, and the temperature I think has dropped 15 degrees in just 45 minutes. But so what about explain about real estate commissions now. wasn't there a law? I mean, wasn't there a change where you can negotiate as a buyer seller? Has that affected you guys at all?
Sure. So I'll speak to what happened, and Austin can talk to you as working in the residential and the commercial market. He can talk to you how it's kind of played out. But there was a national settlement that was agreed upon by the National Association of Realtors.
Why was there a settlement to begin with?
Well, there was a class action lawsuit that was brought towards the National Association of Realtors, one of the largest trade organizations and lobbying groups in the country, right? Yeah. So the 1.4 million members, and this is a organization that encompasses licensed real estate members who choose to join the association. So just because you have a real estate license doesn't mean you're a realtor.
Okay.
Right? So a realtor is a trademark for members of the National Association of Realtors. We subscribe to a code of ethics, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a set of practices that we follow, and you can get called out on that. So that's the overarching organization. There were sellers that came out and sued the National Association of Realtors as a collective, saying, we think we may be overpaid in commission.
Overpaid?
Well, sure. I mean, they weren't going to sue us for underpaying. So yeah, they came out and the lawsuit ended up being settled. Right?
But it is true. If you guys are making 6% 20 years ago, and all of a sudden you're selling $400,000 homes and not $200,000 homes.
Well, but if that was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was 7%. So the commission fluctuates based on property value, but it also fluctuates on demand of expertise and the work that you're expecting of your real estate.
All right, so they had the suit, and what was the result?
The result was a settlement, so yes, every state came out and on their documents posted that the commission is negotiable. It always has been, right?
Okay.
If I had sat with you in your living room as a seller, or you sat in my office as a buyer, we could always talk about where do we want to go and what is our fee for that level of service.
But did that really happen, or did people just kind of accept it? I mean, just sellers and buyers.
Oh, it happened, certainly. We had that conversation.
So now there's more negotiation? I guess practically.
Well, I will let Austin speak to what is happening.
So practically what's happened?
Practically what's happened, I would say things have ultimately boiled down to having more of a conversation about it and outlining what exactly you are paying for our services and how it's being offered. I'm thinking more in terms of talking with your seller. Typically before, when we went and sat with a seller, we would come with a request of an X percentage, and
like 6%.
Like 6%, 4%, it all varies, and it's always been a negotiation what that number was. Dividing it down the middle or in a different percentage to pay a buyer broker was always the assumption, I suppose, that some states and some brokers were using, is that we are going to pay a buyer broker to bring a buyer in, and they're going to have their services paid for that way. So having a clear conversation with a seller about that maybe wasn't always happening behind closed doors, and being upfront on those costs and how it was truly being paid. They may have been assuming that 6%, 4%, whatever it is, was just being paid to our agency for selling the house, when truly there was a percentage being shared with the buyer broker. So I think.
So wait a minute, when you say the buyer broker, so who's the buyer broker? I'm confused here.
So when the buyer broker comes in and brings a buyer to your house, we're listing your house for sale. We agree upon 6%, 5%.
So if I sell, just so I understand this, if I'm selling a house and you guys are representing it, so I say, okay, we agree on 6%. But what was going on, let's say, but somebody else, another realtor not in your firm came through then, so you would share that 6%.
Correct.
Split it basically with that, and that's the buyer broker, is that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So the broker representing the buyer.
And how's that changed?
Now it's changed in that we're having a much more upfront, you and I, being the seller, are having a much more upfront conversation on how that fee is being paid out. And it is also broken down on our listing agreements now. Before it was a top line number, 5, 6%, whatever it is. Now it's being broken down and saying, your fee to me as a seller's agent is X. And down here on the next line is, are you going to offer a buyer broker X amount as well for a total 6%? That's what's being offered. What we're seeing in changes now is that the commissions from a buyer broker when they're writing an offer, they're coming to a seller and presenting it, is that they're writing in that fee a lot more now. Now, before it was on our MLS, you could see exactly what was being offered by a seller, 3%, 2.5%, whatever it was. Now it is no longer allowed, and you spoke a little bit to this. You're not allowed to publish those numbers in our MLS databases. So a lot more communication going on broker to broker on what fees are being offered, and that's all being directed by the seller, whether they're willing to offer it or not. We've seen some situations where they're not offering it.
Yeah, so it's
very convoluted.
It seems like it's more transparent. I get that, but
Yep.
it seems like from a perspective, like if I'm going out, I want to sell my house. No, I don't want to pay a buyer broker. Why would I want to pay someone an extra 2 or 3%?
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, there's a lot of nuances to this, and that's why that counseling from our agents comes down to a private conversation in your living room, right? Because there might be reasons to buy or incentivize a buyer broker, right? You're putting your property out there. Buyers are coming to the table with every penny pulled together. I mean, 10% down, 20% down on your home is a significant amount of cash to bring to the table on top of closing costs and what have you.
So it's really, so I'm sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but it's really about, you do this up front, right? So if I go to you and you're representing me and I'm selling my house and I say, I don't want to pay a buyer broker anything. Well, obviously you're going to say, yeah, but you're not going to get any offers from buyer brokers, right?
No, not necessarily. The buyer brokers will come to the table, right?
Sure.
But they may go ahead and include that fee
That's
into
what
the
I was
offer,
saying.
right?
Okay.
Is that- so we're seeing more of that now, where the buyer might say this, or they may choose not to, and they're going to compensate their broker outside of the closing. So it is, I know, you can shake your head because it is complicated, but that's where it boils down to the advice and the conversation we're having with each client as
You think
to
it's a
what
good
makes
thing?
sense. I think it's opened up the conversation, but ultimately, and you see in the headlines, it hasn't created a sweeping change in the industry, which some called for that would happen, right?
Because the original thing was to try to get lower fees, wasn't it? I mean, that's the whole idea of the lawsuit, was just to
Well,
reduce the fees.
So a lot of this is set by the market, right? I mean, you can't control necessarily the price of your house. It's
Right.
set by a market. There are only so many levers that you or I could pull to manipulate the price of your home.
Okay.
Right? Same idea with the fees of the real estate industry. There's so many ways you can go about asking an agent to do more for less. Someone might say yes, someone might say no. And it boils down to a market. What does an agent really feel like they're going to be worth?
Your level of service, right? You know, what type of broker do you want, and what do you want them doing for you? You know, some go above and beyond, some offer more basic services. We've seen more of those breaking into the industry, I would say, you know, offering, just we post it online for you, but you as the seller, you are opening your door to the buyer. You're seeing more of that as well. And
Boy, it seems like it's just adding, you've talked about it for 10 minutes and I'm still confused.
yes,
and I think a lot of people are, and that is
Yes.
where we encourage people to call us, sit down with us, and let's talk about what your options are, and we'll math it all out for you and show you what you come home with at the end of the day when we do our job.
All right, I think we're out of time, and after you've confused me, I think it's time to go. I appreciate you coming in, Brendan. Thank you very much.
Mark.
Austin?
Always.
Mark, thank you.
Okay, thanks for coming in. We'll see you guys.
Thank you.